Hello guys, welcome back to another video on the status forecast weather channel. Today there will be likely be two videos releasing out. This first one is obviously going to be, I'll tell you guys in a few minutes. But the second one is going to be, actually you guys already know. The first one is going to be covering the United States weather, but the second one is also going to be covering the wildfire situation in California because it's getting a little bit out of hand. But in today's video, we're going to first start off with radar and satellites, and we'll talk about that for the first couple of minutes. Second part of the video is going to be probably looking at the Climate Prediction Center because they have a few outlooks. Unfortunately, they did remove the snow outlook, but I think snow is still a potential in the forecast. Okay, I think it's still a potential, and I'll tell you why again in a few minutes as this video goes on. And then third thing is obviously your future radar, your precipitation, your temperature anomalies, your temperatures, everything there, winds as well. So yeah, let's get into today's video. So currently right now we're just dealing with some snow showers. Most of it's happening in the Great Lakes region and across the interior Northeast and parts of far western New England. Rain showers in the Gulf Coast near around the Tampa area, near Florida, and parts of southeastern Georgia. Cloud cover is happening across the Pacific Northwest. You can notice in the central and southwestern part of the country, it's pretty quiet. This includes areas all the way from Chicago, I don't even know what state that is, I'm going to guess. Chicago, Illinois, all the way to San Diego, back through Mexico. Well, Mexico is not really part of the United States, but you get the general idea. Mostly cloudy skies. The only exception is in New Mexico where they're seeing maybe just a few flakes. It's nothing, doesn't look something like that serious. Maybe a few raindrops in there as well. Some of this could be falling on the locally heavier side of things, but they're not expecting a whole ton of precipitation out of it. Cloud cover continues across much of the northern half of the country. This will remain the big picture, I think, for the next couple of days. Now we're going to get into your temperatures. Here's your temperature plot. Obviously, cold air starting to plunge in from Canada. There's a sharp turn here, and I'm not sure what's going on here, but there's a sharp turn between near to, I'd say more than likely below average temperatures, versus well below average temperatures. Temperatures across Maine all the way through portions of northern parts of Arizona, I think, yeah. And through Seattle is dealing with temperatures between all the way from 20 to around 40 degrees, and then obviously the south obviously stays on the warm side of things, 60s to near 70 degrees, even one spot in far southwestern Florida. Locally higher temperatures with a 77 degrees reading. Current winds out there. Here's your temperatures. So there's sharp contrast between the Pacific Northwest and the upper plains. Upper plains is dealing with pretty much below zero temperatures as that Arctic air begins to plunge in through Canada into the United States. Sharp contrast between below zero and below average temperatures. Not slightly below average, I would say slightly below average temperatures because this seems pretty normal to me. 50s along the west coast. That freezing line gets pretty far down. It's not really the freezing line, but those 30 degree temperatures get all the way down into portions of Georgia, all the way down through portions of southeastern Arkansas. 50s to near 50s to near 60 degrees in Texas across the southeast. Only exception being in Florida and far central and southern Florida, where they're seeing temperatures all the way from 70 to 80 degrees. And then obviously we'll be continuing to track this Arctic air. And then basically northeastern New England dealing with temperatures between around 20 and 40 degrees. Some locally higher spots are possible. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Here's the winds. So as you can see, there's a few spots in here, several spots actually of not much wind going on, but obviously that doesn't depict from the actual picture. So most of the winds are happening around the Lake Erie and Lake Ontario area, where they're seeing gusty northwesterly winds causing more lake effect snow as of now. Montana could be seeing some really gusty winds as we scroll in here and zoom in. We could see sustained winds. This is not gusts, by the way. This is sustained winds east of Bozeman, Montana, and east of Kalispell, Montana, dealing with potentially winds between, I'd say, 40 and around. I wouldn't really put it at 60 miles per hour, but like 55, maybe 57 miles per hour. That doesn't even show the actual like wind gusts. And then obviously California in a dangerous situation right now. Winds continue to be sustained at around 20 to 50 miles per hour, some spots locally higher. And obviously those wind gusts will be way higher. Portions of the Appalachian Mountains getting on some gusty winds between 20 and 35 miles per hour, maybe around 40 miles per hour in some spots. And then the Gulf Coast a little bit gusty out there as well. I'm not sure if they have a wind advisory down there, but I know they did a few days ago. Alright, now we're going to get into Climate Prediction Center. Alright, so here's the 6 to 10 day outlook. The temperature outlook, that is. Only problem is for the, actually this doesn't really matter, but it does actually matter, actually. Temperatures, the only spot really out of this concern is the cold concern, that is parts of the western half of the country, mostly in Nevada and California, and obviously the far southern parts of Florida. And then we get a big bullseye spot. Well, not a big bullseye spot, but there's a bullseye spot that sets up in the southern half of the Great Plains down into portions of just north of Louisiana, where much below average temperatures are very likely. And then there's a wide spot all the way from the west coast all the way to the east coast, extending as far east as all of Maine and all the way down into Florida, where we're just going to be seeing below average temperatures. Leaning below, whether that's leaning below average temperatures or 90 to 100% below average temperatures, you're dealing with below average temperatures. 8 to 14 day outlook doesn't look much different. I mean, obviously the colors are a little bit different, but it's still covering the majority of the same area. Above average temperatures are still likely in the Nevada and California area, where pretty much the entire country is seeing below average temperatures, except for obviously very far southern Florida, where they're just leaning below average, but that's still technically below average temperature. And obviously the bullseye being across much of the eastern half of the country. This extends from the Great Plains and the lower Mississippi Valley. I think that's what you call it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's that. Snow probabilities, obviously you can see no hazards posted, but we did have an area that was marked from about the Maine area that extended all the way down through portions of New Mexico. They have removed this. I'm not sure why they did that, because some of the weather models are still showing a potential snowstorm in the northeast, especially on the eastern seaboard, and maybe some more shots of snow or potential for snow in the south, which is very unusual, which we just had a snowstorm that affected portions of Texas that ranged all the way up through the Carolinas. And for some reason, some of the weather models are showing snow on the Gulf Coast. Take that with a grain of salt, but we're not too far away from it, honestly. So we'll see how this whole thing plays out, but let's get into the weather model. So here's the temperatures. So the GFS model is already pretty much on point with this as of now. Temperatures, obviously, the coldest of the temperatures are going to be the upper plains and the Canada, but we also want to take a look when the first cold front comes through. I think this is the first cold front right here. I can't really tell because but around I think it's around the 19th or 20th, I think, we get a big cold shot that comes down from Canada, a big Arctic blast. This does not look as severe as it did yesterday or the day before that I did this, the last forecast, but it still brings those frigid temperatures and near to right around that freezing mark, all the way down in, I don't know if I buy this, but all the way down into Louisiana, that is southern Louisiana, that is. I don't know if that temperature mark is going to make it all the way down into Florida, but time will tell. So there's that first Arctic blast. This is more typical for La Nina, I think, but this is what we've not been seeing for a while. This Arctic air mass moving off of the east, it was more local, it was more centered in it was more focused on the central part of the country, upper plains, and into the southeast, and it's not showing that, so I'm wondering if the Climate Prediction Center is going to slightly move that below average temperature, that below average temperature chance just a tad from the Climate Prediction Center, but we'll see what Climate Prediction Center, but we'll see what it does. Another Arctic blast likely probably from the 20th or 25th. This will not be likely as severe, but we have also not taken a look at the European model either. But it covers a good chunk of the upper plains, honestly, and that freezing line does not make it as far down south, but obviously as far south as southern, all the way reaching in, I think those freezing marks reach into just a tad of Florida, right there. I don't know if you can see it on my cursor, but it's 32 degrees right there. That is in Florida, or at least part of it is. Yeah, that's in Florida, just barely. The GFS model is hinting at maybe some 32 degrees in very, very, very far northwestern Florida. We'll have to see how that we'll have to see how that plays out. And then that Arctic air mass moves off to the east, which we have not seen in a while. And then maybe another Arctic blast. I can see that cold air building. Yeah, there it goes. We can see it's had slight warm up here. This is probably a cold front bringing in some rain, and I think that's what we're going to see on the future radar. But anyways, moving on, that Arctic blast comes through on the back end of it. But again, these temperatures stay more on the average side of things. European model, we'll see what it does with this. Here's the European model again, much of the same picture. But as we go through around the 18th to 20th, I think, here it goes. Okay, the European model is a little bit more on the severe side of things with this, which would promote more of a snow pattern. I don't know if I buy the GFS model quite yet, because I tend to think the European model is going to be right. Because the European model is normally, I think in my opinion, has been right for the past couple of winters as far as weather modeling goes, but I think I still don't think that those 20-degree temperatures all the way for freezing marks is going to make it all the way down into Mexico, but I think it does the primary job. I think that the freezing line would most likely cut off somewhere in here where it's been doing, but I don't really think it's going to reach all the way down into here. But I think it does a good job with the temperatures in the southeast, because I think that's a little bit more reasonable rather than the GFS model pushing that cold airline all the way down into parts of northern Florida. I don't know if I completely buy that yet, and I probably won't. So there's the first Arctic blast, and like the GFS model, it's throwing that cold air back into the northeast New England. And then another Arctic blast, this will likely be for the Great Plains and the northeast and interior New England. And then that moves on, and then another Arctic blast, this one on the GFS, the European model, looks a little bit more on the severe side of things, but yet again, you're noticing that big warm-up across the East Coast. It's becoming a trend now for the winter months. We get like a big winter storm. We get a big storm that forms and then like rides up the eastern seaboard, and then like has a big rain and wind event for the northeast and parts of New England. But I don't know if that's going to happen yet. But the weather models were completely off, not with this solution at all yesterday. But now they're completely different. So I guess time will tell. Now, with this being said, what do the temperature anomalies say? So the temperature anomalies, let's go through. So I wouldn't really consider this our first Arctic blast. I think the more significant one comes through 18th and through 20th. There it goes. It didn't look as massive as yesterday, but it's still covering pretty much the same exact area. So we get that first cold blast that basically covers the entire central part of the country. And then that Arctic blast moves off to the northeast, and then another one comes through. That one doesn't look as severe, which is weird to me because we're already on the 24th here, and the 28th is showing a big warm, which I can already see the warmth building in the west. So that's probably that first. Yep, there it goes through. Above average temperatures, and then likely another Arctic blast after this. This looks like 15 to 16 degrees above average. We'll have to see how that plays out. But again, the west, we've just been stuck in this pattern of warm ups and then cool downs. It's just been the same thing. Let's see with the GFS model. I've got a feeling it's going to do much of the same thing. The GFS model just updated, I think. Okay, so the GFS model is way weaker on this Arctic blast, but I do not think that's going to be the case. And I'll probably get into a little bit more of that science later on, I'm not sure. Or that meteorology, I should say. But that cold Arctic blast gets, and then another one comes through, and then a brief warm-up, and then another Arctic blast. You can see cold air building in Canada, and cool air moving through the northeast and the Great Lakes region. But take this with a grain of salt. This is still over 10 days out, almost 15 to 17 days out, honestly. But that's that. Now, what does this mean for our weather? What does this look like for our weather as far as precipitation goes? So, as we go through, I'm going to go basically to the 18th through the 20th. This is not what we saw yesterday at all. We saw cold suppression all the way down in the south. But we get our first storm to develop, and this will likely cause some sort of winter storm in the northeast. So this is a little bit lighter than it was yesterday, and I don't believe this because obviously this would be our high pressure rate here, dragging in that cold air behind it. But with this northeast storm, this is a classic recipe for a nor'easter, honestly. So right there, we've seen this in like 2015 through 2017 for the northeast. Winter storm stays right just south of the Cape Cod area and moves into New Brunswick, Canada, or whatever island that's called. And then it moves on. And with these type pressure gradients, I would not be shocked if these snow bands get a little bit on the heavier side of things if this plays out the same way it's going to, because that will mean a significant nor'easter for the northeast. And then cold air, and you can see the warm air starting to build in the west. This is normally the setup for another big warm-up, and we're probably going to see that with this weather model. So here comes the warm-up, and yep, here we go. Notice that rain stays like into Canada, into far northern New England and the northeast. And then I don't know what's going to happen behind this, whether that's going to get pushed off, because we've also seen this before. We get this cold front to push off, and then this cold front goes like this up the eastern seaboard and creates another big nor'easter for the northeast. We'll have to see how that plays out, but maybe a little bit of a severe weather threat in portions of not Alabama, but Mississippi and Louisiana, and potentially even portions of Alabama, and then moving eastward, and then a mixed bag of precipitation happening around the lower Ohio Valley area and the Great Plains. But the GFS model, or was this the GFS model? This was the original model. So let's see what the GFS model does with this. So there comes that first storm. I don't really know if I trust rain coming in all the way down into portions of down east Maine, because we're still in that cold setup, but whatever. And then that storm develops and it comes up the seaboard. Now, high pressure obviously will be a blocking pattern for the northeast to see a big nor'easter, or the eastern seaboard in general. But obviously, let's say there's another high pressure down here, which I think there might be. I can't really see it though. But two blocking patterns. This is a classic setup for a nor'easter, honestly. It comes out ahead of the initial trough, and then comes up the eastern seaboard with snow packing in the northeast already, with a gradient pressure of like 998 to 995 rapidly. From yesterday, I don't know if you can really tell, but from yesterday's models, you can tell the area of low pressure is actually centered a little bit farther off to the east, which is not a great thing for snow. But with this particular system, I want to show you guys what the 2017 into 2015 storm looked like. All right, so here's the image that I found for the 2017 winter storm on radar. Here's your area of high pressure, low pressure, I mean, centered right off Cape Cod, southeast of Cape Cod. Now take a look at this winter storm that might be in the forecast in the next 7 days. Looks rather familiar, doesn't it? Obviously, the pressure gradient is not as tight, but obviously you got a high pressure up here somewhere. Big area of high, obviously. Big area of high pressure up here. High pressure gradient. It looks really familiar to me, and it's actually pretty much in the same general vicinity, if not a little bit far offshore. But yet again, it doesn't really matter, because these snow bands might be shifted a little bit, a little bit farther to the west or to the east, but this looks like a general setup for a big nor'easter to me. With this area of low pressure moving off to the north and east. I don't know, this looks like a good pattern setup for me. I mean, worst case scenario is you get an area of low pressure that goes a little bit farther offshore, which actually it looks like it's in the same position after looking back at radar. But here's your area of low pressure right here, okay? It's a rather stretched out area of low pressure, but it honestly looks the same to me. You get an area of low pressure that goes up here, right? Cold air plunged in all the way to the south, well offshore. Area of high pressure up here. Strong northeasterly winds. That's your nor'easter right there. And it's not far off either. So, I don't know. You tell me. Looks like a pretty classic nor'easter setup to me. Maybe not as tight pressure gradients, but there's relatively really no high pressure blocking in here. Well, at least on the GFS model there isn't, but there actually is. You probably just can't see it. Looks like a classic nor'easter setup for me. To me, I mean, actually. So there's that. Cold air locked in place, obviously that's pretty classic, because if you get too high pressures, you're going to get a winter storm that marches offshore. That's been the general pattern for these two weather models for the last couple of days, pushing this winter storm offshore. Obviously this is still 8 days out or so. But this would be a monster snowstorm if this high pressure was just shifted a little bit farther off to the west. This would be a massive snowstorm. So that moves off, and then we get a little bit of a warm-up apparently. Again, I don't know if I buy the warm-up quite just yet, but it looks like two areas of relatively weak areas of low pressure. But yet again, there's still potential for maybe some isolated severe weather here, but it's still a long time out. I want to take a look at the European model again. So here's the European model. Moving through, here's that first area of low pressure. So it has a little bit weaker, which is rather strange to me actually, because if you get a high pressure up here and you get this low pressure and they're so close to each other, you tend to get a tighter pressure gradient. So I don't know why that's like that, but again, this is just a weather model. So it has it a little bit farther to the west as the storm system continues to move towards Nova Scotia, or whatever that island is. I still don't know what it is. I think it's probably Nova Scotia. But if we keep going, it's so cold that it's actually keeping that wintry precipitation, the mixed precipitation offshore. As you can see, it's right there. Okay, this looks to me like the same setup from 2017. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure 2017 winter was either, I thought I saw it was an El Nino, but it might have been a La Nina. Okay, so that's rather interesting to me. So the 2017 winter was actually classified as a weak La Nina. Happens to be, we're in the same phase right now. We're kind of in the neutral phase, but we're still in the La Nina phase. And to be honest, it really doesn't matter if we have a weak La Nina or a strong La Nina. It doesn't really matter. This looks like a classic setup for a major nor'easter in the United States. And the way the weather models have been going with this has been particularly really well put out for both models, indicating at some sort of snowstorm. And we're still 7 days out, but this is a really good sign for people that enjoy snow, obviously. But yet again, we're still a long way out. So, I don't know. You tell me. Is this just going to be a massive La Nina? Not massive La Nina. Massive winter storm, is just going to move offshore? To me, so obviously, we had a winter storm a week ago, I think, maybe, that well, I wouldn't say destroyed, but impacted the South in a major way, just creating for a massive storm from mixing of snow, even sleet and freezing rain, all in between. Obviously, this is still 7 days out, but this looks really promising to me, honestly, guys. But yeah, there's that, and then maybe another warm-up, but time will tell. Alright, I guess time will tell, so I think there's potential there for a big nor'easter, honestly. It looks like a classic setup from the 2017 storm system to the same exact storm system. But yeah, that'll do it for this video. Next video will likely be releasing later tonight. I'm going to do a whole video on the fire situation in parts of California. I'll just do some basic things like wind forecast for them, my forecast for them. I don't know if I'll have a necessary forecast for them, but I'll try my best. We'll cover the situation in as best as I can. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. If you did enjoy this video and you want to see more of this content, whether related content that is, be sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, also make sure to hit that notification bell, because, well, you don't want to miss out on any more videos. So there you go, click that notification bell, and yeah, as always, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.